Hey everyone, this is Peter Lisiaga and welcome to the Living Strong podcast. This is where we learn, we practice, and we create so we can live strong no matter what life throws at us. And I'm talking to you, especially the men 40 and older, because at this stage of life, we've all taken some hits. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And here's what I've come to know. We are always in great shape for the shape we're in. Not because everything is perfect, but because we still have the power to choose what any given moment means. That's what I call defining your moments. And I also believe this deep in my bones that we are never too old, broken, bruised, or beat to live strong. So today, I'm excited to share some insight with you, and I'm going to be joined by my great friend, my brother, Kelly Mariano, and we're going to spend some time in these ideas, what they mean, how they show up in real life. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today in today's Living Strong podcast. Kelly, I want to jump right into this and talk about something that's really been on my mind. I'm going to give you a moment to say hello and to share your thoughts on this. And I want to share really what's on my mind is this idea that we're always in great shape for the shape we're in, not because things are easy, but because we still get to decide what each and every given moment means. So, Kelly, how are you doing today, my friend?
Good. Good morning, Peter. Thanks for having me today. It's good to see you as always.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Great to have you here. And thank you so much. I know I think I reached out to you yesterday. and I know you had a busy day yesterday, and I actually said that, hey, let's connect yesterday. I say, hey, can you jump on Zoom right now? But then I remembered that you had your day was already set, and I had to make sure that. But you said, hey, we could do it today. So thank you so much for that. So give me some thoughts, because I know I sent you some information. I sent you my book, the PDF of my book, Living Strong, The Power of Defining Moments. And I also sent you a Living Strong methodology, this thing that I put together to help really take this idea of living strong, defining your moments, and then actually creating this practice that you live throughout your day. Then I also sent you the Living Strong Manifesto. So I've been pretty busy for the last couple of years, and now I'm excited to share with you. So what are your thoughts about this idea of that you're in great shape for the shape you're in?
Yeah, I love that saying when we went out to eat, I guess a week or so ago, and you used that term, and I was like, oh, I love that. It really sticks to you, I guess, and it really resonates with the period of time that I'm in my life right now, and I'm well over 40. So I can certainly relate. It's like you were like it was the manifesto in particular. It's like it was written for me for this time. Like it, like God knew that they needed to coincide in timelines.
Yeah, I know. It's funny because I first heard that from Master Donato many years ago, and he would do it jokingly. At least that was my interpretation at the time. When he said it, he would always do it with a smile, and he'd always do it in a moment that was a very funny moment. And Master Donato, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm in great shape for the shape I'm in. And we would chuckle and move on. But then a couple of years ago, when I was going through my hip challenge and wasn't able to walk, and then I set up to get my hips replaced. Leading up to that, a couple of years prior to that, I was saying that, you know what, even though I can't walk and my hips are losing my ability to do a lot of things that I was used to doing, the kicks and the martial arts stuff that I was doing, I had to tell myself that I'm still in great shape. I'm in great shape. And it had to do with this idea of I had the power of choice. That I, at any given moment, can define that moment by choosing how I was going to view that moment. It could disempower me or empower me. So this phrase, I'm in great shape for the shape I'm in, really started growing to becoming this idea now that everywhere I go, whomever I meet, that's the idea. You're in great shape for the shape you're in. If somebody's, let's say, they're looking at themselves physiologically, and maybe they need to lose some pounds, maybe the doctor told them, and I tell them, you're in great shape for the shape you're in. Why? Because of this, and that's where it really grew. And I thank Master Donato for that. So I know Master Donato, some give him a point because he likes listening. He'll be listening to this podcast, and I thank you, Master Donato. You get full 100% credit for that. And so yeah, we're always in great shape for the shape we're in, and so it's great that that it resonates with you. And I found that the manifesto, as I've been talking to a lot of men, even young men. I spoke to a young man, 28 years old, last week, and he's going to work on one of my music projects, on a music project that I'm doing, and the work that I'm doing resonates with him as well. I've been hearing that from a lot of young men as well. And so I think so. Have you had an opportunity to speak to young men or other men and where they are and what they're going through? I'm finding that a lot of us are really going through some challenges and life hits us.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme amongst a lot of men, even if they don't perceive themselves to be going through a lot. But when you talk to them, you can hear that they are going through a lot. They just have not really identified it in that way. My one of my brothers, I'll say, is we were talking. I was talking to him about marriage, his marriage, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Oh, everything's great, blah blah blah." And then just a couple weeks later, he's talking about these challenges he's going through in his marriage. I was like, "Well, which is it? Is it great or is it challenging?" I mean, they can be both. I
Mm-hmm.
guess there's an
Sure.
and or, but there's It just was funny that he clearly said, "Oh no, there's no problems at all," and then and it may just be whatever. Maybe a way that he's chosen to embrace whatever, or doesn't want to say it exactly the way it is, which sometimes in Christendom, like we're kind of told to adopt this methodology or this mindset that's more where we're not admitting where we really are. This is where we really are, and that's why I like the saying, "We're in great shape for the shape we're in," because this is where you are. Like,
Yeah.
embrace this is where you're standing right now. I don't care how high your kicks were at 30. If you're not 30, I'm 57. Like, it's a different dynamic now for me. Everything's
Yeah.
different for me now with what I'm going through, as you know. So the fact that it is so different, I've had to embrace where I am right now. Like when I talk to God or when He's talking to me, He's talking to me about where I am right now. I mean, He's talking about me in the future too, but He's talking to me right now. So if He's talking to me right now, I can't see myself back at 25. That's not who He's talking to. That's a different man.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Yeah.
different man.
Yeah. For me, I don't imagine God sitting down with me and say, "Hey, remember back in the day when we
And
did,
so,
remember we used to go out and kick and jump around, do all that fun stuff. Remember that?" He does. I don't think he does that. I mean, for me, I don't find myself sitting down with God and going through my prayer and having my quiet moments. And I've never had a conversation like that with God.
yeah.
If there were to be a conversation like that, it would be from my end only. God, I remember when I used to do this, but he would never come back at me with that. He would always remind me, which is what's happening now, is that no, you're in the moment. Define this moment now and move forward with that. And I put a note in my journal and I put it here and I wrote it here. It says I really do believe, and I wrote it literally in my journal, says, "I come to believe that most people don't even realize when they're in a defining moment." And I remember thinking that, we go through our day and our moments and we're not paying attention. We're not aware and we're just going through the motions. And there's a word that I picked up deep diving in a lot of Napoleon Hill's stuff and this word drifting. And I remember I was talking to this young man. I said, it's like, being, like storms of life. You become this wood and you're just drifting. And you're not doing anything purposeful. You're not trying to mitigate the challenge or swim with it or you just drift. But every single moment becomes a defining moment. And I've embraced that. Even now, us speaking right now is a defining moment. And I define it as we move forward. And I know that as we speak right now, I know 20 years later, 40 years later, someone's going to see this. And I know it's going to resonate with them 20, 30, 40 years. So this is a moment that will help someone define their moment and give them power and encourage them and inspire them. And so I know that, and most of us, the people that I've met, don't realize they're in that defining moment, and they can define that moment and say, this is the most powerful, important moment in my life right now, and then give it that attention and give it that value. And so that for me that's changed my mindset. Mm-hmm. Pretty much 90% of the time. Sometimes the other 10% of the times I forget. However, I'm more and more every single day mindful of that. And I was telling Master McGill the other day that I've set myself up that I control what I listen to, what I read, who I'm around, and I'm in this cave. I'm in my cave right here, and I have headphones on. There's no noise. It's quiet, and then I go online and I'll do my research, my reading, and so I define these moments more often than not. But most people don't. So, what have you found with some of the people that you've met with respect to them being aware of their moments?
I really find I don't think that most people are consciously thinking about that being a moment. And I can relate to the drifting that you talked about, because for 2.5 years, for 2.5 years, I just found myself um, with the perspective that I'm just trying to survive today. I just want to survive today. I don't want to talk about tomorrow, next week. None of those exist. And one of the things, I mean, I think I might have shared this with you once, but when I was first diagnosed with the kidney failure, and at some point I looked at my son, who was only maybe 4 years old, and I said, my God, am I going to see him turn 10? Am I going to see my boy turn 10? Which was somewhat ironic, because when he was born, I kissed him on the forehead and I said, I'm going to kiss you on your forehead when you're 50, which would mean I'd have to live to 100. Now, all of a sudden, the idea of me living to 60 was a challenge. And I was like, and I really found it difficult, not that I couldn't, really found it difficult to wrap my mind around the idea of having a life in front of me. Like, not just, okay, you know how they say you put one foot in front of the other?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I could see the foot. Like, I could do that. But ask me for 5 feet down the road. And the thing is, I mean, you probably know this too, that I used to help people develop goals for the year and stuff like that. And then I remember last year I was talking to somebody. I said, I didn't develop goals for the year. I said, I'll have goals for next week. Like, if there's a goal on the week, it's a doctor's appointment or something like that I have to do. Like, I felt subject to my life. So anyway, I just don't find many people that are reflecting on their lives in a way that they're realizing that they're in defining moments. Because, like, you're in them whether you realize you're in one or not. Like, that's the moment doesn't wait for you to recognize it. It's there, and it's up to you to recognize it and embrace the moment for what it is. And to me, even doing this podcast is one of those moments. For me, it's a defining moment for me.
Amazing. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I know before I went through my hips, and when I was 54 years old was when and I'm 64 and I'll be 65 in May. And matter of fact, tomorrow it's my brother's birthday, Tony. He's going to. We're 11 months apart, so tomorrow's my brother's birthday, and he will be 64 years old So until May 9th, he and I are both 64 years old. I guess they call them Irish twins. But yeah, but I know at 54, that's when I got a little twinge in my hip. Getting a massage from a good friend of mine. He's an MMA fighter, Ryan, who's doing really well in UFC right now, and he recommended this masseur because I was competing in jiu-jitsu. I mean, you remember I was doing jiu-jitsu every day, teaching classes every day, and I started competing in Naga, and I was winning. I was doing really good, so I was here this quote unquote old guy at 54 competing, doing well, and I had to go to Naga, and the way the rules were, there were not very many people my age, and so they would drop me down to the 40-year-olds and even the 30-year-olds because there was no one there. And so but I got this twinge. I went to this masseur to get my body worked out because my body was really training hard. I was running every day, going to the gym, just crazy stuff. I was at the peak of my fitness. And I remember saying, I'm at the peak. Wow, this is great. And I would brag to everyone that I'm going to live to 100. And, I would be, let's say, I wouldn't say I was 54 years old. I would say I'm 46 to 100. And next year I'll be 45 to 100. And then so forth. And like right now at 64, I'm 36 to 100. In May, I'll be 35 to 100. But when I lost the use of my hips, 54 is when it started. I continued training. And when I got to about 56, 57, got to the point where I couldn't really train the way I did. And then the pandemic came and got worse through that. And so it came to that point where I stopped talking about living to 100. I stopped talking about, a future that I had imagined. And so I struggled with that, with just, and I'll be honest, when I was younger, I struggled with not wanting to be here. I think you and I spoke about this a bit, just not wanting to be here. I mean, when I was younger, I definitely wanted to, just to die. I didn't feel that way, but I know I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to live what I thought was the future of my life, knowing that I had this idea. Now here I'm going into a future, and you and I relate to that. And I could, I hear that in you. And so I got to that point where, I'm a teacher, I'm a martial artist, my kids are watching me, and I've been teaching this for such a long time, this idea, this concept, being a martial artist, being a warrior, having this warrior spirit. And, and God had reminded me of that. I know when I used to preach, and I was trained to be a preacher, went to school, became a licentiate, and I knew every time I would prepare a sermon, I knew leading up to the day I would do the sermon, a Sunday, that I would do due diligence, ask God, what do you want me to talk about? What's going on in my life? I'd find a scripture, I'd work it out. I have everything that I need to do, my notes for my sermon. But I knew the moment I got up to the pulpit that in that moment, and you could relate to this. And those of you that are Christian, you could relate to this. Those of you that are not, I think you have an idea of that you get into a moment, and then the universe. I know for me, when I got to a moment when I would preach, God, the Spirit, would then give me what needed to be said for the people and for myself. And I knew that I had a word that I had to share with what I was going through. And that word was not be here. And so I had struggled with that. And this is where Living Strong came. And I think you remember that. I used to tell everyone, you got to be black belt strong. Black belt strong. Remember I did a rap song, Black Belt Strong. And so I said, well, it has really nothing to do with black belt, because black belt martial arts is just a small part of life. But living strong. And that's where it really, that was going to be my thing. I got to live strong. And this is where I decided I got to do it right now. I don't know what my tomorrow looks like, but I know what today, right now, can look like. And this is when I really started working on my heart, working on my mindset, working on my spirit, working on my body. And it's funny because and you can, with a thought, if you ever thought, you could interject anytime. I remember people would ask me, maybe you were one, what will my black belt test be like? And I would tell them this. I would say, look, your black belt test is this. I'm your instructor. My job is to test you to the point where your body is broken. And then once your body is broken, then my job is to break your ability to think clearly. To destroy your ability to think clear. So you lose your body and you lose your mind, so that we get to what I was told many years ago when I was 9 years old, when I first started martial arts. I had no idea what it meant, but definitely now I know what it means. Get to that indomitable spirit, that warrior spirit, that when you lose your body and it's broken and you lose your mind, what's left is that warrior spirit. And for me, when I started thinking about living strong, it then became more than just the body. And I realized, losing my hips, how I identified with that. I didn't know that until after I lost my hips. I didn't know I identified to my physiology, my athleticism, the gift that God had given me. And I had saw myself as this athlete and superhuman. And I was like, oh, God had to take that away. Well, I don't want to say that had to be removed out of my life for me to see where the real strength was. And so I know living strong and being at your best has really very little to do with your physical attributes, but it has everything to do, has a lot to do with your mental mindset, but it has more to do with that spirit in you, the spirit of that warrior, your indomitable spirit. And so this is what, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that, and I said that the timing of even this podcast was really good for me, because it was at this, like when you brought this up to do, it was at a timing when I was turning a corner out of some degrees of depression and stuff like that. And I also went through a period of time, like I never specifically wanted to harm myself, but if I wasn't going to be here, I would have been totally fine with that concept, other than my son. And a friend of mine reminded me of that the other day. She said, God is funny. Like, he even made sure you had a son. He gave you a reason to hang in there. He gave you a reason. And it's like, and it's clearly your son. And I was like, I mean, I have other children too, and they're important to me as well. But there's something about, maybe because he was so young or whatever, or maybe the challenges that he has, it just was very important to me to give something to my son. And like God even said, he needs to see you do certain things. There's things he needs to see that he's not going to see from his mother, because she's a woman. She's not going to see a man. I mean, she can't demonstrate a man to him.
Right.
He needs to be his father.
That's 100%. And this is why, I chose to be very specific in who am I speaking to? And this is why I chose men, and specifically men that are 40 and older. And because I know when I was 20, when I know I should have listened, now I reflect back, I should have been listening. I didn't. I wasn't ready. But when I got to about 40, 45, around that time, I was ready to listen. And I was ready to listen. And God started bringing a lot of people into my life. And many of them are still great friends right now. And so this is why I chose that. And for you, your son, mine is my grandson. And still, yes, just like my other children, my son now, who was with me yesterday when we went to see my wife in opening night of Jelly/Jam last night, and having my son there. I'm acutely aware of the fact that people are watching me. I'm in the light in a small way in Mount Laurel, in my community and online. People are watching. And I'll go in my community and people come to, you're that guy, Peter, right? I see you all the time. I love your stuff. And so I had to really put my feet, really get hard on myself, not hard on myself, but stand on this idea that, okay, what are you going to stand for? And are you going to stand strong there? And then, because I used to say that, watch what I do, don't listen to what I say. And if you have a question, ask, because I want to be ready to explain why I do what I do. And so this is where, it really helped me, especially when I knew Alexandra was ready to was going to have a baby, I was going to be a grandfather. Oh my goodness, I wanted to be there for him, and I wanted to be there for my daughter, for my son, for my wife. There were all these people that I wanted to be there for them. And it became, for me, not so much, yes, the future, but more importantly, the moment. Like even right before I started here, right before I came here, I took a bit of a pause and went to in the house. Alexandra was up, getting ready to preparing breakfast for Sarah, for my grandson. He was in the room looking at a book, and I said, "Okay, I'm gonna spend a couple of minutes with him." So I go into the room. He's sitting there with two books, and he's 20 months old. Starting to talk, he looks at me. He says, "Want to read?" He has two little books. "Want to read?" So I sit down with him, and it's those moments. And again, it's the moments. It's not tomorrow or the next moment. It's this moment. And this is where, that's where my life happens. My life happens in the moment. In martial arts, we talk about being present, focused, be in the moment. But again, now it means more to me now at 64, getting ready to be 65, than it did, let's say, 5 years ago. Certainly 7 years ago. Okay, right now. And so this is where Living Strong is in this very, very moment. And we're always, always in great shape for the shape we're in. And it's about what we learn, and then how we take what we learn and we actually put it to practice in the day, every single moment, especially when we're given those challenges. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about, taking what one learns and saying, you know what, I learned this. I had a bad situation or I had a good situation. I had a situation or a circumstance and experience. I had a moment. What can I take from that moment that I can now add to the practice of living strong in my day? And so let's talk about that, because that's one of my convictions. My conviction is that you always have something to learn. So now take what you've learned, put it to practice. And then once you put it to practice, get creative about it. Whatever you have to do, there's learn, practice, create. Now, then the next part of that, after create, is teach. And so I'm definitely at that place. This is why I'm here. I'm teaching, and in a way so that others can hopefully embrace these ideas. So what are your thoughts on learning something and then putting it right to practice? And I know I have a feeling that you would say, yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm not a lawyer trying to like lead you. Oh,
Yeah,
maybe I am.
not
I
at
don't
all.
know.
But no, but yeah, I can definitely relate to that, which is, obviously, because I mean, you've been a teacher for me for over, I don't know, for some 20 years. I think we met around 2000 or 2001,
Could
maybe.
be, could be. You are
And
everyone.
yeah, because I remember I had heart surgery in 2000.
Yep.
So I know that I knew you
It was
at,
shortly
at
after
that
that.
time.
Then,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And so I've learned, uh, because I've talked to some people about you that will probably, or that may never meet you. I don't know if they will or not,
Mm.
but because it's such a expanse of time, like I was talking to somebody, I said, "Oh, you're my martial arts instructor." She said, "Oh, Peter." And I was like, "Oh, that's funny." I was like, "Clearly, I've talked about him enough that you know his name." But like the stories that I'll share and that are not necessarily martial arts related. Like I'm not showing her a technique
Hmm.
or something like that, or like this, how to defend your life and stuff like that. Like there's things that I've shared that I've learned from, even other people as well. I share with them, and it's stuff that I've learned, so I want to pass it on. Now, of course, I probably spent, I don't know, outside of with you, another 6 or so years teaching at another martial arts school and helping there and sharing those lessons, which is kind of funny because the nuances from instructor to instructor stand out when you've learned certain things. And I remember when we were going through getting me ready for my black belt, and we would do different like kata, the forms and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And you would tell me, oh, okay, if you do your punch here, but if another master instructor had you move it here, then you need to remember where they where they wanted you to have it. And I'm like, what is this, a quiz fest? I want a quiz. I'm going to put my hands and let me be done with it. But it's the nuances of no, there's different levels of instruction. Not maybe levels is not the right word, but different instructors that you'll have that you're going to learn from, and there's nuances that you need to absorb that maybe you're not going to absorb it all from one person at one sitting. There's
Hmm.
nuances, and certainly there's nuances in you as a
Yeah.
person. Like so, like you said, when you're not the same person as you were at 25 or 45. Well, I'm not the same person either. So there's times where I'm like, yeah, I'm just in a different place. And I remember somebody going through this process, this healing process that I'm going through. Somebody said to me, wow, you really seem different. And I was like, looking at it, I'm like, I wonder, I didn't know what seemed different to them, but I knew I felt different, but I
Hmm.
didn't know why. Because I'm like, I don't know why I feel different. Like I feel like one day I felt so good. I was like, I don't even know why I feel as good. Like it just was almost bizarre that I didn't feel depressed. I didn't feel anxiety or whatever. My wife thinks they have to deal with anxiety too, which maybe they go together. Anyway, but the point was I didn't know why I felt good, but I did. And I was like, well, I'm just going to take it. Like I feel good. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm just going to embrace feeling good. Like
Hmm.
I feel good. Like I felt so good. I was just totally amazed by it. So anyway, but yeah, I fully embrace. I'll say your words back to you, but I fully embrace the idea of learning something and employing it, or even sharing that. First of all, the sharing of the knowledge helps you as a teacher.
Yeah.
It
Hmm.
helps you to teach because you're teaching something that you have just learned, so
Hmm.
it's fresh in your mind. So definitely when I would teach someone self-defense, stuff like that, like there's stuff. I was telling somebody telling somebody this about a week ago. I was talking about different things that you and I would do and on the floor, and you would adjust me because the system that I learned before I met you, it was a system that they were more aggressive on the floor.
Hmm.
And I would do like from someone having you in a headlock, I would reach up and I'm grabbing the throat.
Hmm.
I'm doing throat grab. And you're like, oh, don't do the throat grab. And I'm like, I don't I don't understand. They've grabbed me. And I mean, I understood what you were saying as you explained it, but it was a nuance that I needed to understand, and I had to pass that along because there was a time where I was training like teenage boys, and
Hmm.
the wisdom was there's certain things I wasn't going to put in their hands to figure out whether or not they know how to apply that because like there's certain things. I mean, my son will be 6 in a week. I'm not going to show him a knife wielding technique.
Hmm.
That would be bad for him and for other people.
Hmm.
Like he's just not ready for that level of detail or that level of information. So I appreciate the difference. I appreciate the fact that there's stuff that you learn, and through maturity you learn when that information is applicable. right?
Yeah.
Like there's stuff that you don't karate chop somebody because they tap you on the shoulder and ask you the time.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like there's
Hmm.
time in the season for everything. And, I've learned a lot over these 57 years and well, a lot more in front of me to learn because I'm learning more even about God.
Hmm.
Not that he's changing, but my ability to see what he's doing
Yeah.
or appreciate what he's doing is different.
Yeah. I know that I always well I've years ago I learned about auditing my day. What am I doing with my 24 hours, so that I could be mindful and be aware. And I know many people, when someone sits with me and they've reached out to me, and then they ask for help. And someone always has to ask me for help. I never assume that they want my help. So I'm one of those people. I don't assume people want to be held accountable. That's just the way I think, and I help people understand that of me. I don't correct me, and don't hold me accountable, because I've never given you that permission. Because I think we have to get to know each other before one gives one the permission. But when someone gives me reaches out to me and says, "Hey, look, I'd like to speak, chat with you," and so I'll go through a series of questions, and more often than not, mostly for them to reflect on questions that hopefully they could maybe have not asked themselves, and then because I asked them, they'll come up with some answers that are hopefully insightful for them. And more often than not, I think 99% of the time, it comes down to, well, let's look at what you're doing in the course of your day. What's your practice? What do you do when you get up in the morning? What's the practice? What do you do when in the middle of your day? What's the practice? What do you do at the end of your day? What's the practice? What do you do when you are aware that you are in a stressful situation? What's the practice? And how far are you in that stressful situation before you are aware that you are in a stressful situation? And I'll talk about, so it becomes like an audit, a deep dive audit, to really look in, because we go through, as a martial artist yourself, people will say, "Oh, you're a black belt? Well, what if someone does this to you?" So you have these what if questions. So I say that's a great question. So then I go through a whole series of questions for them. You have your what if question. Well, let's create the scenario. Let's create the time of day. Let's create your mental state. Let's create your physical state. Let's create your spiritual state. Let's create and imagine the perception of the person that you're confronted with, their physical state. And then I asked a big question. At what point did you become aware of all this in that what if situation? Well, what if I'm in a dark alley, and I'm going down a dark alley, and I try to go turn around, and there's all these guys with guns. That's okay. So let's reverse all that. And so but what I'm finding is that people, when they stop and pause and look at the practice, they realize, oh my gosh, I am not aware of what I'm doing. And when I do become aware of it, I am not giving myself the power of choice. And then they put themselves in a situation where they are like victims more often than, and I'll say just up, they are victims. They have this victim mindset. It's politics. It's the weather. It's that person that did this, or that person that said this. My mom, because she did this when I was a kid. My dad, or my friend, or this person, that person. And, they're, as a person that was abused, I get all that. But there was a point in my life that I had to say, it stops. And now I take full reins on my power and the power of choice. And I remember I read a book one time, many, many years ago, and I saw it in the bookstore. And because of the title, I got it, read it, and then I got it. And the title of the book was "One Thing God Cannot Do." It was like, at the time I was like, wait a minute, God could do anything and everything. I mean, God is almighty. You know, he's got the power of the Holy Spirit, Christ, and all this, and God, And it came to, in this book, that he cannot choose for you. You have the power of choice. And that planted that seed to where I am today. And then, of course, when I read, I do a lot of reading and speaking to a lot of people with this respect to what I've learned, creates conversations. And then, of course, you know, with Jocko Willink and, you know, his buddy Babin, Leif Babin, when they wrote, you know, Extreme Ownership, that helped to really lock in on this idea. I'm going to take ownership of my life, of the experiences, the circumstances, the situations. Even if I didn't cause it, I take ownership of defining that moment. And I believe most people, they go through their day and they have practices that are big, good, bad, doesn't matter, and practices that are small, and they're paying attention, not paying attention. And I think a lot of people really go through their life more often than not paying attention. And my goal, and this is what Living Strong is about, and this is why I wanted to create this new YouTube channel, Living Strong, or this YouTube channel here, the Living Strong method, because the method is to learn, to practice, to create, and then to learn, practice, create, just keep going. But you have to be aware. You have to have what I call your A game. You have awareness, assess what you become aware of, and then you choose the right, appropriate action. That's the A game, 3 A's. And it's something that started off with self-defense, but now it's something that's gotten bigger than self-defense. And I think most people in their day don't do that. And my hope is to put myself out there and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm getting back into taking my physical, where I am physiologically, to maintain it so that I can do what I hope to do. Live strong. My mindset. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm learning. This is what I'm doing. This is my practice. And then a challenge comes up. I get creative, learn more, update the practice, always continue, iteration, evolution. And so this is what I encourage people to do. This is what this channel is about. This is, you and I talking, is hopefully to enlighten people to some of the concepts, the principles of what I'm calling the Living Strong methodology, and having this mindset. And it's not easy, and I know it's not. And I'll speak to my daughter about it. I'll speak to other students and parents, grandparents about it, and they'll say this: "Gosh, that's so hard." Yeah, I know, but I remember years ago, probably after you, I know. But just because something's hard, does that mean we should not do it? And if we are going to do it, should we not, have the right mindset to believe that, okay, we are in great shape for the shape we're in to confront this hard, and I have the ability to choose to be harder. So let me be harder, work harder, learn harder, practice harder, elevate, escalate, evolve, iterate, everything. And so practice after the learning to create. So that's where my head is, and that's what the learning, the practice to create comes from. So yeah, so your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I was back to the hard part. It reminds me of when you and I would train, towards the black belt component. And I remember one time, I was married to Rachel then, and she said, "Peter is crazy." And I was
Love
like,
it.
and the funny thing is, I never really thought of you that way. Like if not in a literal sense, but like if you walked off a cliff, I probably would have just been walking behind you because I was trying to follow what you were doing, or an instruction that I was being given. So I never, like, when different things that an example of that was like when I did the black belt test, and up until that day, I had only broken boards. And then we go to your car and you break out this block. I mean, it's piece of stone or whatever it was. And I'm like, what the heck is that? What is that? And the thing is, and I was like, don't think about it, just do it. And my mind kept saying, what if your hand doesn't go through that material? Because like I want to evaluate that mentally, and I was like, well, he's not gonna have me try to break something that he knows that I can't. I was like, he must at least believe that I can put my hand through this thing. So I'm gonna just do it. And that's what I did, but it was just like I left the hard behind because I'm going somewhere. And the where I'm going requires me to go through hard, whatever that looks like. Like and not to teach a biblical story, but like it with Shadrach, Meshach, and the
Mm-hmm.
bad Negro and the
Mm-hmm.
bad Negro. But
A Bendigo.
yeah. So, but like in their story, they were like, well, even if God doesn't deliver us, we're not going to do. We're not going to submit to what you're saying because it's counter to what God has already instructed us to do. And I was like, that's some deep stuff when you really pull back the layers. That wasn't an arbitrary thing. Like you can walk me to my death, and I'm gonna say to you, "Oh yeah, it doesn't matter what he. Yeah, it matters. Yes, it matters." But to embrace it the way that they did, to me was very
Mm-hmm.
powerful. That we're going to walk through this hard, whatever that looks like, because they didn't necessarily have. I mean, maybe they had a picture in their minds, but they didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. Like you're walking me into a furnace for crying out loud, and I'm saying, well, it doesn't matter. Yeah, well, I'm not sure that it doesn't matter, but where they were in their process was, we're going forward with God. This is how this works.
Mm-hmm.
So the hard doesn't matter. Oh, and another hard, and this might bend people a funny way, but my daughter, who was well, technically still is, but she's married to a woman. So when she was getting ready to get married, she called me and she said, "Oh, Dad, I just wanted to make sure you're still going to walk me down the aisle." I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"No." I said, "No." I said, "I'm sorry, Latrice." I said, I've been praying about this for a while, but I can't in good faith do that. Like, I feel like that's not where God wants me to walk this out."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's funny, I've caught a lot of flack over that over the years, not necessarily directly from her, but some from her as well. But the reality is, there's some hard things in walking through this life with God. Like it's like you said, there's one thing that God won't do is make our choices for us.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not going to do that. But the choices that we need to make, some of them are going to be very difficult. I mean, and it says that in the word that some of the decisions you got to make are very, very difficult. I mean, it could be life or death decisions, and you're like, well, that's kind of a hard statement to make. There's some hard statements that Jesus made too. Because people are like, wow, that's deep. Well, it wasn't deep. It's just a hard choice, but it's still your choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's still your choice to make. And a lot of people didn't like the choice that I made that I felt that I needed to make, and I felt was the right decision. And I'm not really concerned about whether or not people agree with the decision or not. It's a decision I had to make. Like it wasn't, you weren't there making that decision. I had to make a decision, and it's you know I made the decision that I felt that was right in my relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was not an easy decision, nor does it remain to be an easy decision because I'm still living with some of the ramifications of that decisions with her, with my
Mm-hmm.
daughter. Like there's times where like we had we got together and we had oh, let's work through some of these things, whatever, like kind of squashing some of these things. And my daughter Latrice
Mm-hmm.
specifically, because I was another daughter, Jennifer. But anyway, I was like, let's squash some of these things, and we supposedly mended some of those things. But the reality, Peter, is it's not all mended. I mean, for me, it is. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't hold any. who she chose to marry or whatever, that was not my decision.
Mm-hmm.
That's your decision. Like you get to live with that, but
Mm-hmm.
how she interacts with me, to me, is clearly residue of the decision that I made before.
Yeah.
So while you live with your decisions, other people may make you try to make you pay a consequence, it seems, for for those decisions. And in fact, I've had conversations where people said to me, "Oh, you still can't accept her marrying um someone of the same gender." I said, "No problem accepting anything." I said, in fact, the history shows, and my relationship with Latrice is that before she got married and when she was dating same gender and all that kind of stuff, I went out with her and her girlfriends and stuff like that at the time. Like I didn't avoid them. I went, when they did things at the house, I went to the house. Like I went there because that's my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
That's my flesh and blood. Like God didn't tell me to avoid her.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I'm not operating in what she's operating in. I said I'm just being there for her.
Mm-hmm.
I love my daughter, and I'm going to be there for her in the context in which I'm able to do that. And that's what I did. So I don't regret any of that. I mean, it created challenges in my relationship with her
Mm-hmm.
that I never expected. You know what I mean? Like there was
Yeah.
stuff where she'll do, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, that's kind of weird. Like
Mm-hmm.
like she kind of mentioned that she was going on a trip, but it was kind of like almost like a Freudian slip.
Mm-hmm.
Like she never connected. She didn't fill in the gaps, right? Like
Right.
she's telling me
Mm-hmm.
the story. I was like, well, I guess she's going somewhere soon or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out the somewhere was Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I didn't find out it was Europe until she was boarding.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, I know you're 30. I mean, I guess she was 36 or 37 at the time. So she doesn't certainly need to tell me where
Mm-hmm.
she's going, but
Mm-hmm.
she would have. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
before all of that,
Yeah.
she would have told me
Yeah.
a detail like about
Yeah.
her going to Europe. So
You know,
anyway, it's
what's
interesting.
amazing is that and this is why a podcast like this, I believe, is important because I think of myself, mid 20s, 30s, and again, getting ready to be 40. And then and then even getting to 40, 50, when those of us that are years ahead, me going to be 60, 65, and I think you said you're going to be 58 then.
Yes.
And so when we look back on our lives and we look at the hard moments, it's it's on the other side of the hard that we learn the greatest lesson about ourselves. And right before I wrote my book, Living Strong, the Power of Defining Moments, and it was going to be just Living Strong 2, because I had done a first one. And the second one had to be written because a lot of people asked me, because the first one was just my attempt at doing it, and a lot of people were asking get more in depth. And so the second one came out, and I went back and revisited a timeline that I did when I was in my 40s that was asked of me from my mentor at the time, Pastor Mark. And I remember when we went through my timeline, gave him permission to ask anything on this timeline. And he had asked me about several things, the loss of my son, on this and that, but these are all hard moments of my life. And he asked me, and when we stood back, he looked and he said, what do you notice about everything, especially those hard times in your life, those very dark valley experiences? And I said that I learned the most about myself and God, the universe, and how it all worked together, and how I am in that moment and today, being here today, because that means I'm 64, being 65. That means I've went through a lot of hard moments, and I'm still here. And there were a lot of moments that I thought I wasn't going to be here. And there's a lot of moments where it could have easily been, I'm not here because of an accident that I was in. I know the friends that I know that are gone because they had things that were not as dramatic happen to them. You know, maybe I have one friend that he got a little scratch, and he was our phonetics coach in Germany. He got a little scratch, and that became infected, and it got into his blood. He died. A little scratch. And so, whereas, I was in car accidents, I've been in gang fights with knives and guns, and, some of them I didn't get a scratch. My brother got stabbed up and everything, like got beaten up with pipes, and, his body's riddled with scars from this. Mine is, maybe I have a bump on my head from a pipe, and it's this lump here that I always have to explain with my new hairstylist. But it's on the other side of the hard. And so I remember a couple of weeks ago, I wrote an article about, faith versus blind faith and something along those lines. But the idea was that, having blind faith, it's not what I want. I want to have faith and belief based on what I've learned, what I've practiced based on what I've learned. And I get to this place where I am convicted and I stand on this. And I remember I used to preach this idea of conviction, where I'm so captured and so embraced by this idea that I'm convicted, like I'm a prisoner from it. I cannot escape this idea, that it's such a truth for me that it's embraced me, and no matter what I try to do, I cannot escape it. Like I'm imprisoned by this. I'm convicted by this. I remember doing something like that a while ago. And so this idea of, as I move forward with faith in living this moment, making this moment, defining this moment, and my conviction, my faith is that it is valuable, it is important, and that I will honor it and I will respect. Those are two words I use a lot. I want to honor your choice. I want to respect your choice. I'm not looking to agree with it. I'm not looking to judge it. I want to honor it. And I will seek to understand. And through my understanding, then grow from that. However, it's hard. But on the other side of hard, for me, I found is where I can live stronger in the next moments. And so I embrace the hard, and it's hard. It's hard, but I've gotten so much better with it. And the older I get, I know I spoke a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity, I was brought in as a speaker to a senior citizen rehabilitation center where they live. And these are seniors that are 80 to 97 years old. That was my audience. They were all sitting down either in a chair or a wheelchair. And they were there because they had strokes or they're struggling with dementia. But they were all there. That was my audience. And I had never done it before. And I knew it would be hard. I had an outline, and they wanted me to come in because they wanted to try this. They've heard about me, the work that I've been doing with families and adults with additional needs. And they say, hey, we have this idea to bring you in for an activity and teach them karate. And I said, oh, well, okay. But I went in, and Christian, my son, came with me. He documented it. He's actually in charge of my media, takes my pictures and videos. And on the other side of that, I learned. And I also asked them, and I spoke to a 90-plus-year-old, and I asked them, what would you say to young people when they're confronted with hard things? And they all said the same thing, that you'll get through it. Just hang in there. You'll get through it. And what are you going to say to them? No, I'm not. And meanwhile, they're sitting there, and unless you're saying to them that you've never been through hard stuff, so you have no idea, I think this is why for me, at 64, you at 50, 57, we have to speak to all men. But let's encourage the 40-year-olds, because I believe they're at a place right now that they know they need to do something, whether they're wealthy or not, because I've met a lot of millionaires. I'm sure you as well. I have a couple of billionaire friends that I know that, when I sit with them, and my conversations always turn into something like this, and we're talking about their challenges, their struggles, what they're going through as a human being, this human experience. And money doesn't change that. Affluence doesn't change that. So this is for me. This is important. I need to hear it. I didn't hear it as often as I would have liked, or in a way I would have liked when I was younger. So this is my way of speaking to to that 20-year-old, that 40-year-old, and I believe that conversations like this are important, and that those of us that have been through hard, can create a way to share, and so that when somebody asks, "Hey, this is what I'm going through. What can you share with me that can help me through this?" And then we are in a position to give them, a reason for the hope that we have.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that's pretty much what I wanted for us to talk about, share on this podcast, and yeah, I do appreciate you sharing with me. So, any ideas, any thoughts that before we wrap this up that you want to share with others?
Well, yeah. Well, with you in particular, the other side of hard sounds like the title for a new book.
I got to write that down. I like that.
Yeah, it
You
really rings.
see who writes one first.
Yeah,
It's out there. If I write it, I'll definitely credit you in the beginning part. I want to thank Kelly Mariano and for
okay.
giving me the idea to write this book, The Other Side of Hard. I'm actually writing it down. Other Side of Hard.
So
Yes.
when you were talking about the seniors that you were uh, talking to, it was a reminder. I think I told you about this part of what I've gone through also, but I had multiple strokes also, and I was unaware of that because I didn't have any quote unquote sensations or quote unquote side effects that I was aware of anyway. And in fact, when the doctors walked into the hospital room, I was talking to my wife, and they said, "How's he doing?" They said, "I don't know how he's doing that." I turned around and said, "Doing what?" And then my wife said, "Talking," because they had just told her before, not long, well, earlier that same morning, they had just told her not to expect me to put two words together.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, "Well, it's too late for that." Like, I'm already, talking, but it was, you know, interesting, I guess, that, God chose that experience for me to have gone through multiple strokes and to have had no real lasting effects from it. But I did have some serious memory challenges. Like if you gave me, you know how when you log into maybe a website and they give you a code, or
Mm-hmm.
they send a code to your phone or something like that. Like I couldn't remember a 4-digit code long enough to flip to another screen and
Mm-hmm.
enter it. And then after a while, I was talking to a friend of mine who she kind of showed up. I'll just say she showed up after I hadn't seen her in 22 years. And I was talking to her one day, and she said, I was explaining something to her. She said, "Kelly, we've been communicating for 6 months or whatever it is." She said, "That's the most detailed explanation you've given since I've been talking to you again." She said,
Mm-hmm.
"It's clear that, it was clear for her anyway that God was clearing up my healing my brain." And I started realizing, I was like, actually she's right. And then I started putting together pieces and realizing, like I've been doing this dialysis for 2.5 years, but at this particular location for about a year. And there's two ladies that are like caseworkers or whatever. Peter, until about maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I had no idea what their names were, either one of them. Like I knew that one was, I think, Suzanne. I think I knew that, but which one was Suzanne? I had no idea. And I didn't remember the name of the other one. So I didn't call them anything. When they would walk up to me, I would just talk to them. And then when stuff started getting clear for me, I was explaining that to one of them, to Suzanne. I was explaining that to Suzanne, and I said 2 weeks ago I couldn't have called your name at all, like not on the bet.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody gave me two names, I'd had a 50% shot at guessing what your name was. but I had no idea who you are, or like, or certainly not what your title was or anything like that. I just
Mm-hmm.
knew you were from this dialysis center. That's all I could
Mm-hmm.
tell you. And I realized more and more over time that God was clearing the cobwebs or whatever you call it, and giving me a clarity that I didn't have. In fact, there were tasks, things to do, like to do items, whatever. I didn't really write them like that, but if I had a couple things to do, I always had to write them down because I couldn't remember more than one or two things at the
Mm-hmm.
most. But if it was a list, I couldn't handle it. In fact, like when I was still in the same under the same roof with my wife, she used to give me my medication, and I was taking 3 high blood pressure medicines at the time, and so she would, when the time came, I was taking medicine at 9 in the morning and 9 at night, and when the time came, I would just go to her, and she would hand me the medicine. So one day she's explaining to me why she's not giving me a particular medication, and I said, listen, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to be helpful. I said, that doesn't help me. I said, giving me the information is more than I can handle right now. I said, I just need to know when I ask you for the medication, you're going to give me what I need to take and that you're not trying to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to take whatever you put in my hand. I'm just going to take it. I don't need the explanation. I said, I appreciate you explaining it. I said,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't help me because I can't retain that information. But
Right.
now it's
Mm-hmm.
different. Like now I can retain
That's
more, so I
great.
can clearly see the healing
Mm-hmm.
process that God is taking me
Yeah.
through.
So Kelly, man, I really appreciate you. I mean, wrapping this up, I truly do. And to everyone out there that's watching, this is what living strong looks like. Just taking lessons of life, learning from what life is teaching, what you're learning, and then putting it to practice. It's not loud, definitely not perfect. It's a practice. You practice it. You practice every day from sun up to sundown. Just be aware of that. And it's in the way we show up every day and how we choose to show up, and in the moments that nobody sees, especially, and the decisions we make again and again. So wherever you are right now, remember this: you are in great shape for the shape you're in, and you still have the power to define your moments. I'm Peter Lisiaga, and remember, living strong, I like to say, is just a tap away. You can just tap into something to connect with someone, and I'm there, and of course Kelly Mariano is there. You guys have a great day. So Kelly, thank you so much. You have a great day, buddy.
You too, Peter.